15 hours, the fire consumed a square block of the city. Smoke efforts of the blaze to burn itself out, but towering above the ashes was a Minneapolis landmark. Though charred and soiled, the weather ball stood tall. Its inner life was long gone because of the fire, but the fact that it's still standing left many to contemplate the future, the rebuilding process. The fire story dominates this Friday, November 26th edition of the 5 p.m. report. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Don Shelby. Ann Rubenstein is in the newsroom right now.
Good afternoon. Other aspects of the fire story we're covering this afternoon include the effects on Northwestern National Bank, what it's doing today to maintain customer services after the fire gutted its headquarters. The aftermath of the blaze left Minneapolis with the downtown dilemma as thousands of people came downtown to see what remained of their workplaces. And thousands of others made this the biggest shopping day of the year despite the fire. We'll find out how their day went a bit later. Don?
Okay, Ann, thank you very much. First, let's call on Dave Nimmer. He's standing by at the fire scene with the latest information on the spread of the fire. Dave, how goes it, and what is the situation at the fire?
Well, Don, the damage figure that everyone is using today is about $30 million, and mind you, that's not a firm figure. This morning, insurance investigators began to go through the building, going through it floor by floor, and their task is far from completed. And I suspect that it's going to take another day or at least 2 days before they're completing their task, and that figure could go higher or lower. The real question today, Don, of course, is how did the fire start? And the answer is that arson investigators aren't sure. Last night, there were reports of a man who reportedly told pedestrians that he started the fire. The report said he had a woman companion. Today, investigators say there are many different versions of those rumors, and they are trying to check them down, and how much credence they can put in them, they simply don't know. There's a possibility that the fire started spontaneously in a pile of rubble adjacent to the bank building in the Donaldson's shell, which, of course, was being wrecked. And as far as fighting the fire, well, there was some good luck and bad luck. The good luck was that none of the walls collapsed on any other buildings, and the winds diminished. They were only about 2 miles an hour at the height of the fire. The bad luck was that the Northwestern Bank building was not sprinkled, and the firemen didn't get an earlier warning. It was hoped, of course, that the alarm would be turned in right away. It was not, and by the time firefighters got here, the flames were 80 to 100 feet high. And as you can see behind me, Don, they're beginning to wreck some of the building now. The security around the bank building will be provided around the clock. It'll be by a private firm hired by the bank. And the fire crews will be here for at least 2 days. There are all sorts of spontaneous little fires, mainly in the rubble at the Donaldson's building. So it's quite a scene, kind of eerie. And you can look out, and it looks almost beautiful, which is a far contrast, of course, from the disaster. But the fact is, Donald, it could have been much worse. There were no serious injuries, although one firefighter is still hospitalized with a possible heart attack.
Thank you very much, Dave, for your report. A fire of this magnitude involves hundreds of city personnel, the most notable being the firefighters and the police officers. But for downtown commuters, there's also a dilemma.
Don, the dilemma boiled down to where you could and couldn't travel downtown today because of the cordoned-off streets and detours. Barb Brown looked into that story, as well as the early estimates of the cost of public services. What was happening to people who went downtown this morning?
And we were there at sunup this morning. People were already trying to get to work. Those whose offices were in the blocks just surrounding the fire scene were taking chances, going through barricades, walking on very icy sidewalks to get to work. They just didn't quite know what else to do. And there were more police officers as time went by, and more barricades were put up also. And there were already some people coming just to watch the scene. It was an eerie scene. David just said that. And this morning it was also a very eerie, smoky scene. The rubble was like ice sculptures. We talked to Mayor Fraser today, and like many other people we talked to, he said he was awed by what had happened, but relieved that it wasn't worse than it was.
What kinds of things are going to factor in to the city or anyone determining the cost of this kind of a disaster?
Well, the city officials are trying right now to assess those costs, and there were about 130 firefighters on at a time, and it's their overtime that is going to be a big part of the cost. That overtime could come to 1,000 hours, and that's at time and a half. There's no dollar estimate yet because everyone has a different salary. The police don't have the overtime to worry about. They had reserve officers, and they're not sure yet what will have to be done in terms of street repair. That's all to be figured out.
Thanks, Bob. Don?
Well, of course, one of the firms that was hardest hit by the fire was the Northwestern National Bank. To assess the damage, the bank's chairman of the board, Peter Gillette, has joined us this afternoon. It wasn't a very good day for you yesterday. You spent a lot of it out there watching that building go and not knowing how far it was going to go. That must have been a frightening experience for you.
It was frightening, Don, because about 7 o'clock last night, as the winds began to shift and that main fire blast started moving down Marquette Avenue towards 7th Street and moving down from the 11th and 12th floors down floor by floor, it was really a question of whether or not any part of the building was going to be saved. And of course we had another concern because we had a major exhibit inside our bank, and the beloved Lindbergh Jenny was sitting inside there. There was no way to get that plane out of there. But along with the fact that we were blessed by having no deaths, that Jenny was saved, and some portions of the bank have been saved. Whether they're saved for possible future use still remains to be seen.
Some parts of the bank were totally wiped out. That is, the interior parts of it were saved. Your office, for instance, is totally gone. That's on one side of the building. The other side of the building doesn't seem to be as affected.
Basically, the floors from 6 up through 16, from the center of the building, the center of Marquette, to 6th Street, are, for all intents and purposes, either burned out entirely, or the water damage or smoke damage is so bad that its future use would be highly questionable at this stage.
Here's some pictures of the Jenny. Did it sustain any damage that you know of?
To the best of our knowledge, no. I was in the building this afternoon for about an hour and a half. We're experiencing a lot of water leakage that's coming down from upper floors, but fortunately, I don't think not a drop of water really has gotten on the Jenny itself.
How long is it going to take to rebuild? Do you have any idea at all what it's going to take to put that back together, those upper floors?
No, it's structurally, we know that the building is structurally sound. It is not going to collapse. It'll take us some time before we can have a total assessment to really get some understanding of what is possible, what the cost would be to replace it. We are insured. But it's just going to take a lot of time. In the meantime, we have been making plans today, and will continue to do so tomorrow and Sunday, to relocate all of the facilities within the bank building itself to other locales throughout the downtown area.
I'd like to ask you a question that I hope you don't take as being flip, but we got a lot of phone calls when there was concern that the Northwestern Bank building was on fire. People calling us saying, is my money okay? Is the money okay?
The money is absolutely okay because, first of all, the vault doors are all entirely sealed. Nobody has opened those up. But more importantly, I think all of our records that are computer-driven are housed down at our operations center further down the block. And everything is safe. The securities, the accounts, everybody's money is safe and secure. I'm pleased to report.
Very good. Thank you so much for coming in today on a day that I know can't be a very pleasant one for you.
No, it's not.
But thank you very much once again. The force of the fire forced evacuation from 90 rooms of the Marquette Inn last night. None of more than the 100 guests of that hotel were injured. All were transferred to the North Star Inn or the Hyatt Regency in downtown Minneapolis. As for the Marquette Inn itself, the fire blew out windows in the hotel and filled several floors of the building with smoke. The Marquette Inn hopes to reopen tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. The downtown fire did little to dampen the spirit of downtown shoppers on this traditionally busiest shopping day of the year.
Well, besides the holiday bargains, the thousands of shoppers spent part of the day anyway as spectators gazing at the smoldering ruins of the fire. But there were some wrinkles in the business day, and Colleen Needles is here with that story. What was going on? What did you find out today?
And there were a lot of people who came downtown today. In fact, it looked like any other Thanksgiving or day after Thanksgiving shopping day, except that a lot of these people weren't doing any shopping. They were gathering around store windows, looking out at the destruction. I noticed that a lot of the cashier registers were not busy. People weren't browsing in the aisles, looking at the merchandise. Rather, their attention was on what had happened across the street. A lot of the merchants were very disappointed. This has been a bad time for retailers because of the ailing economy. They were hoping that today would be a shot in the arm, and it doesn't look like it will be.
The people were there just looking instead of really buying, is what you're saying.
That's right.
Did all the stores open today? I don't assume a lot of them did.
No, in fact, Donaldson's, the new Donaldson's, opened late, opened at 11 o'clock. There was a lot of ice in front of the entrances. Had a lot of smoke lingering in there also. And all of the shops in the IDS building were closed today, closed because of smoke damage there also.
And as far as we know, what's going to be open tomorrow or closed?
They're hoping to get the IDS shops open. They're not sure yet whether they will be.
Okay, thank you. Don?
Okay, thank you. Now, the pictures that we've seen of the fire engines out of that fire this morning, caked with ice, gives you some brief idea what the weather is
The
like.
firefighters battled the blaze, which gutted part of a major bank building. Guests were evacuated from a luxury hotel, but no serious injuries were reported. Meredith Vieira has the story.
One resident described the fire as Minneapolis's version of the towering inferno. The top 12 stories of the 16-floor Northwestern National Bank building engulfed in flames that shot 100 feet into the air. It began in an abandoned department store next to the bank, already partially demolished. It simply got ahead of us, firemen say, taking with it a block in the center of downtown. The buildings in this area make up a huge mall. They are connected by skywalks, convenient tunnelways that suck in smoke and flames. One of them provided a path from the bank to JCPenney's department store, but firemen were able to control the flames before the store was seriously threatened. The smoke was another matter. Early this morning, 12 hours after the first alarm, it still hung over the downtown area. Firemen could only stress how lucky this city was. Had it been windy yesterday, they say, the fire could have spread much further. Had it not been Thanksgiving, the shopping mall area would have been full.
I think we could have had a real disaster if it started and got that head start like it did on a work day. We could have lost a lot of people.
This was not the backdrop Minneapolis merchants had in mind for the Friday after Thanksgiving, what is traditionally the busiest shopping day of the year. Shops in the IDS building, the town's largest skyscraper, were closed today because of blown-out windows and smoke damage.
Well, it's terrible. We should have had a really big day today, one of our biggest days, and we just can't open, and it's very doubtful that we can open tomorrow.
The first airplane Charles Lindbergh ever owned, the Jenny, was on display in Northwestern National Bank's lobby yesterday, but miraculously it suffered little damage. And bank officials say no money or records were lost in the blaze. But officials are calling this the worst fire in Minneapolis history. $30 million worth up in smoke and still smoldering tonight. Meredith Vieira, CBS News, Minneapolis.
Firefighters are working to put out what's left of the fire that has caused an estimated $30 million worth of damage. Roger O'Neill reports.
It was the worst fire in Minneapolis history and burned out of control for more than 12 hours. The fire started in the abandoned Donaldson's department store, being torn down and spread to the adjoining 16-story office building of the Northwest National Bank. Damage is estimated at $30 million. Arson has not been ruled out. Police are still looking for 2 people seen running from the building. On display in the lobby of the bank building was Charles Lindbergh's first airplane. Fire officials say the Curtiss Jenny biplane sustained some smoke and water damage, but was not destroyed.
The bank, Minnesota's largest, moved all of its computers and records to another building about 2 years ago. What money was in the bank building at the time of the fire was protected by fireproof vaults.
But for Bank Vice President Jim Buckles, the fire destroyed 30 years of history.
Spent my whole business career for the most part, right in this building.
The fire scene brought thousands of people downtown today. Officials at Donaldson's, which moved into their new building just 3 months ago, said business was heavier than expected.
Oh, I'm sure that the fire is a major attraction in drawing people down here.
But smoke damage closed the 35 small stores in the Crystal Court Mall.
It was about the wrong time of year to have anything like this happen.
Today was one of the most important shopping days of the year. It's going to have a tremendous impact on all retailers here in the IDS Center.
A dozen firefighters were injured battling the extra alarm blaze, but there were no deaths. Roger O'Neill, NBC News, Minneapolis.
And Hawaii is still digging out from under the crippling effects of Tuesday's hurricane. Dennis Murphy reports on an unusual rescue mission.
The nuclear submarine USS Indianapolis cast off from Pearl Harbor today, sailing on a unique mission. The sub may be turned into a 1,500-kilowatt electric generating station. A Hawaiian island may plug itself into the Indianapolis. In California, at the Point Mugu Naval Station, 3 giant generators were loaded aboard a C-5A cargo plane.